Marcus Chen had seen many planets during his 15 years as a freelance cargo hauler, but Zephyria Prime still took his breath away. The crystalline cities stretched toward purple skies, their surfaces catching the light of twin suns and casting rainbow patterns across the landscape. What didn't take his breath away, unfortunately, was the smoke rising from the capital city's outer districts. His comm system crackled to life as he guided his ship, the Time's wandering star *, through the planet's upper atmosphere. Unknown vessel. This is Zephyrian traffic control. State your business immediately, or prepare to be escorted away. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Time's wandering star *, he replied, his voice steady despite the tension building in his chest. I'm here to deliver medical supplies to the refugee camps in Sector 7. There was a long pause. Captain Chen, be advised that Sector 7 is currently under siege by rebel forces. We cannot guarantee your safety. Quote. Marcus had expected this. The civil war on Zephyria Prime had been raging for 3 years, ever since Crown Prince Valdris had accused his brother of treason and split the royal family. What Marcus hadn't expected was to care so much about the suffering it caused. Understood, traffic control. I'm going in anyway. As he descended through the clouds, Marcus could see the full scope of the devastation. The once pristine crystal towers were cracked and blackened. Refugee camps sprawled like dark stains across the planet's surface, filled with displaced families who had nowhere else to go. The Zephyrians were a proud species, tall and graceful with their blue-tinged skin and elegant features. But war had a way of humbling everyone. Marcus landed his ship in a makeshift spaceport on the edge of Sector 7. The moment he stepped onto the landing platform, the smell hit him, a mixture of smoke, fear, and too many people living in too small a space. Children with hollow eyes watched him from behind makeshift shelters, their normally vibrant blue skin pale with malnutrition. Captain Chen? A voice called out behind him. Marcus turned to see a middle-aged Zephyrian woman approaching, her once fine robes now patched and dirty. I am Dr. Yesakrin. Thank you for bringing the medical supplies. We desperately need them. Marcus nodded, gesturing toward his ship. Everything's in the cargo hold. Antibacterial agents, pain relievers, surgical equipment. Everything on your list. And then some. As they unloaded the supplies, Dr. Kryn filled him in on the situation. The rebels have surrounded the city. They claim they're fighting for the true heir to the throne. But all I see is suffering. Families torn apart, children orphaned. She paused, her voice growing heavy. Yesterday, they attacked the royal compound. Prince Valdris managed to escape, but his 3 daughters were taken hostage. Marcus stopped what he was doing. Hostages? How old are these children? 17, 15, and 12, Doctor, Kryn replied. Princess Lyra, Princess Naya, and Princess Kira. They're being held in an abandoned mining facility about 50 kilometers from here. The rebels are demanding that Prince Valdris surrender the crown in exchange for their lives. And will he? Dr. Kryn's expression was grim. Prince Valdris loves his daughters, but he also believes that surrendering would plunge the entire planet into chaos under his brother's rule. He's conflicted. Marcus finished unloading a crate of medical scanners, his mind already working. He'd spent years navigating the gray areas between law and necessity, and something about this situation didn't sit right with him. Tell me about this mining facility. Captain, surely you're not thinking. Just tell me about it. Dr. Kryn sighed. It's an old crystalline extraction site. The tunnels run deep underground, and there's only one main entrance. The rebels chose it specifically because it's nearly impossible to assault without putting the princesses in danger. That evening, Marcus sat in his ship, staring at satellite images of the mining facility he'd purchased from a data broker. Dr. Kryn was right. It was a fortress, high walls, guard towers, and a maze of underground tunnels that could hide an army. Any direct assault would be suicide, and the princesses would likely be killed in the crossfire. But Marcus had advantages that the Zephyrian military didn't. He was human, which meant he was smaller and more agile than most Zephyrians. He'd also spent years sneaking cargo past customs officials and pirates. Skills that translated surprisingly well to infiltration. More importantly, he'd learned something that Dr. Kryn hadn't mentioned. While researching the facility, he'd discovered that the old mining tunnels connected to an underground river system. The Zephyrians, being a desert species, had never fully mapped the water channels that ran beneath their cities. But humans were excellent swimmers, and Marcus had explored underwater cave systems as a hobby back on Earth. He spent the night preparing. His cargo ship wasn't built for stealth, but it had a few modifications that most customs officials didn't know about, including a small scout pod designed to look like space debris on sensors. He loaded it with diving equipment, emergency rations, and enough weapons to handle a small army if things went wrong. The next morning, Marcus launched the scout pod from orbit, using the planet's magnetic field to mask its approach. He landed in the desert 20 kilometers from the mining facility, near a rocky outcrop where ancient geological surveys had detected underground water sources. It took him 3 hours to find the cave entrance, hidden behind a curtain of crystalline formations that the locals probably considered sacred. The water was cold and clear, flowing through limestone passages that had been carved over millions of years. Marcus activated his diving gear and began following the current downstream. The underground river system was more extensive than he'd hoped. Tunnels branched off in every direction, some so narrow he had to squeeze through sideways, others opening into vast underground chambers filled with bioluminescent crystals. His handheld scanner showed that the water was gradually trending toward the mining facility, following the natural slope of the landscape. After nearly 4 hours of swimming and climbing through increasingly narrow passages, Marcus finally found what he was looking for, a vertical shaft that led upward, with artificial lighting visible far above. According to his scanner, he was directly beneath the mining facility's main complex. Marcus climbed slowly, using specialized grips designed for zero-gravity work. The shaft was old, and partially collapsed in places, but it held his weight. As he approached the top, he could hear voices echoing from above, Zephyrian voices, speaking in urgent tones. "The prince still refuses to negotiate," one voice was saying. "Perhaps it's time to send him a more convincing message. General Thane wants the eldest daughter brought to him," another voice replied. "He thinks seeing her fear might change the prince's mind." Marcus felt his jaw clench. He'd dealt with his share of pirates and criminals over the years, but threatening children crossed a line that even the worst smugglers rarely touched. He reached the top of the shaft and carefully lifted the grate that covered the opening. He was in a storage room filled with old mining equipment, and through a crack in the door, he could see guards patrolling the corridor beyond. The voices were coming from somewhere deeper in the complex. Moving silently, Marcus made his way through the facility's lower levels. The rebels had clearly been here for a while. They'd set up sleeping quarters, a communications center, and what looked like a torture chamber that made his stomach turn. But they'd also gotten complacent, leaving many areas poorly guarded. He found the princesses on the 3rd level, locked in what had once been a supervisor's office. Through a window in the door, he could see 3 young Zephyrian females huddled together on a bench. The eldest, who must be Princess Lyra, had her arms around her younger sisters in a protective gesture that reminded Marcus of his own sister back on Earth. There were 2 guards stationed outside the door, but they were focused on a card game and not paying attention to their surroundings. Marcus waited until they were both looking at their cards, then moved quickly. The first guard went down silently, Marcus's training from his brief military service coming back to him. The second guard started to reach for his weapon, but Marcus was already there, applying a sleeper hold that dropped the Zephyrian without a sound. Marcus quickly dragged both guards into an empty room, then returned to the office door. The lock was electronic, but he'd come prepared for that. His universal decoder, technically illegal in most sectors, but useful for a cargo hauler who sometimes dealt with clients who forgot to mention locked doors, made quick work of the mechanism. The door slid open, and 3 pairs of large, dark eyes stared up at him in shock. Princess Lyra immediately stepped in front of her sisters, her chin raised defiantly despite the fear Marcus could see in her expression. "Who are you?" she demanded in accented galactic standard. "What do you want with us?" Marcus held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm here to get you out." "You're human," Princess Naya observed, her voice filled with wonder rather than fear. "That's right," Marcus replied. And right now, that's an advantage. I'm small enough to fit through places your guards can't follow, and I know paths they don't know exist. Princess Kira, the youngest, spoke for the first time. Are you really going to rescue us? Like in the stories? Marcus smiled despite the seriousness of their situation. That's the plan. But I need you to trust me and do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that? Princess Lyra studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. We trust you, Captain Chen. But how do you plan to get us out of here? This place is surrounded by guards. The same way I got in, Marcus replied. Through the underground river system. It'll be cold and dark, and you'll need to hold your breath for longer than you're probably comfortable with. But it's our best chance. The princesses exchanged glances. We can swim, Princess Lyra said. Father insisted we learn. Even though most Zephyrians don't enjoy water. Good. We'll need to move quickly and quietly. The guards will notice you're missing eventually. And when they do, this place is going to become very dangerous very fast. Marcus led them through the facility's lower levels, avoiding the main corridors and sticking to maintenance passages. The princesses followed without complaint, their natural grace serving them well in the cramped spaces. More than once, they had to freeze as footsteps echoed nearby. But the rebels' patrols were predictable, and Marcus had memorized their patterns during his reconnaissance. They reached the storage room without incident, but as Marcus began opening the grate that covered the shaft, alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. They've discovered we're gone, Princess Lyra said, her voice tight with anxiety. Change of plans, Marcus replied grimly. We're going down fast. Princess Kira, you're with me. Princess Lyra, take your sister. No matter what happens, keep moving toward the river. The shaft echoed with shouting voices from above as the four of them descended into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on throughout the complex, casting strange shadows that danced across the stone walls. Marcus could hear heavy footsteps on the level above them, and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone thought to check the old mining shafts. They reached the bottom just as the first flashlight beams began probing the shaft above them. Marcus grabbed the emergency diving gear he'd stashed near the entrance and quickly distributed it among the princesses. The river's current is strong, he explained as they put on the breathing apparatus. Let it carry you, but watch for the markers I've left along the way. When you see the blue light, swim up. That's where we exit. Princess Kira looked scared, but she nodded bravely. I'm ready, Captain Chen. They entered the water just as voices echoed from the shaft behind them. The underground river was even colder than Marcus remembered, and he could see the princesses struggling with the shock of the temperature change. But they adapted quickly, their natural grace translating well to underwater movement. The journey back through the tunnel system was harrowing. More than once, Marcus had to grab one of the princesses and pull her away from a side passage that would have led them deeper into the cave system. The current was stronger than before, swollen by recent rains in the mountains, and several times they were swept against rock formations that left scrapes and bruises. But finally, after what felt like hours, Marcus saw the blue marker light he'd left near the exit. He signaled to the princesses, and they all swam upward, breaking the surface in the hidden cave where he'd first entered the underground system. They emerged gasping and shivering, but alive. Princess Lyra immediately gathered her sisters close, checking them for injuries while Marcus activated his emergency beacon. Is it over? Princess Naya asked, her teeth chattering from the cold. Marcus handed her a thermal blanket from his pack. The dangerous part is, my ship will be here in 20 minutes to pick us up. As they waited, Princess Lyra approached him. Captain Chen, why did you risk your life for us? We're nothing to you. Marcus looked at the three young women, tired, scared, but still standing strong after their ordeal. Maybe not, he said, but sometimes that's exactly why it matters. Sometimes the best thing about being human is that we help people who are nothing to us, simply because it's the right thing to do. The sound of engines filled the cave as Marcus's automated retrieval system brought his scout pod to their location. As they prepared to leave, Princess Kira tugged at his sleeve. Captain Chen, when we get back, will you tell Father what you did for us? Marcus smiled. I think your father is going to be too busy being grateful to care about the details, Princess. But as they lifted off into the purple sky of Zephyria Prime, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their adventure was far from over. There had been something in the way the rebels talked about General Thane, something that suggested this civil war was about more than just succession to the throne. And deep in the back of his mind, he wondered what secrets might be hidden in the royal compound that Prince Valdris was so determined to protect, secrets worth risking his daughters' lives to keep hidden. The royal palace of Zephyria Prime was even more magnificent than Marcus had imagined. Towering spires of living crystal grew from the mountainside, their surfaces shifting through every color of the spectrum as the twin suns moved across the sky. But the beauty was marred by signs of war blast scorches on the outer walls, defensive barriers hastily erected around the perimeter, and the constant presence of armed guards. Prince Valdris met them in the palace's medical wing, where royal physicians were examining his daughters for injuries. The prince was older than Marcus had expected, his blue skin marked with the subtle ridges that indicated advanced age among Zephyrians. But his eyes burned with an intensity that spoke of a man carrying burdens far heavier than years. "Captain Chen," the prince said, his voice thick with emotion as he watched his daughters receive treatment. "I cannot begin to express my gratitude. You have given me back the most precious things in my life." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under the prince's intense gaze. "They're brave kids, Your Highness. They made the rescue possible by staying calm and following instructions." Princess Lyra looked up from the examination table where a physician was treating the scrapes on her arms. "Father, Captain Chen saved us by swimming through underwater caves. He knew paths that even our military doesn't know exist." "Underwater caves?" Prince Valdris's expression grew curious. "You must tell me more about these passages, Captain. Our geologists have always insisted that the water table beneath the capital is too deep for practical access." Over the next hour, Marcus found himself giving a detailed briefing to the prince and his military advisors about the underground river system. He used his scanner's data to create rough maps of the tunnels he'd explored, marking potential strategic advantages and vulnerabilities. "This changes everything," General Kess, the prince's military commander, said as she studied the maps. "If we can use these passages to move troops undetected, we could break the siege of the outer districts." "With respect, General," Marcus interjected, "those tunnels are dangerous even for someone with specialized equipment and training. Your soldiers would need extensive preparation before attempting to use them." Prince Valdris leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Captain Chen, you have already done more for my family than I had any right to expect, but I find myself wondering, would you consider staying on Zephyria Prime for a while longer? As a military advisor, perhaps. I'm not really qualified to." "You navigated a tunnel system that our best experts said was impassable," the prince interrupted. "You infiltrated a heavily defended rebel stronghold and extracted 3 hostages without firing a shot. I would say you are more than qualified." Marcus found himself agreeing, though he wasn't entirely sure why. Maybe it was the way Princess Kira had looked at him when they emerged from the caves, as if he was something out of a fairy tale. Maybe it was the genuine gratitude he saw in Prince Valdris's eyes. Or maybe it was simply that he'd grown tired of running cargo from one end of the galaxy to the other without ever making a real difference. Over the following days, Marcus found himself settling into an unexpected routine. Mornings were spent with General Kess and her staff, analyzing intelligence reports and planning operations to retake rebel-held territories. Afternoons were often devoted to training sessions, teaching Zephyrian special forces the basics of underwater navigation and cave exploration. But it was the evenings that surprised him most. Princess Lyra had appointed herself as his cultural guide, insisting that he needed to understand Zephyrian society if he was going to be effective as an advisor. What started as formal lessons quickly became something more personal. "Your species is fascinating," she told him one evening as they walked through the palace's crystal gardens. The structures around them hummed with a low, harmonic resonance that seemed to respond to their footsteps. "Most species we've encountered are either purely logical, like the Vorthan Collective, or purely emotional, like the Etherian Empire. But humans seem to balance both in ways we don't fully understand." "I'm not sure we understand it either," Marcus replied, watching the way the crystal formations shifted color in response to the princess's proximity. We just do what feels right, and hope for the best most of the time. Is that what you were doing when you rescued us? What felt right? Marcus considered the question seriously. Partly, yes. But there was also a logical component. The Civil War is destabilizing the entire sector. If your father falls, it could trigger conflicts on dozens of other worlds. Princess Lyra stopped walking and turned to face him. You really believe that? That our small planet matters that much to the galaxy? Your father is one of the most respected leaders in this part of space, Marcus said. More importantly, Zephyria Prime sits at the intersection of three major trade routes. If this planet falls into chaos, it affects commerce and politics across half a dozen systems. They walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, passing fountains where liquid crystal flowed like water, creating patterns that seemed almost alive. Finally, Princess Lyra spoke again. Captain Chen, may I ask you something personal? Marcus, and sure, do you have family? People who worry about you when you take risks like you did for us? Marcus felt a familiar pang of loneliness. I have a sister on Earth. Sarah. She thinks I'm crazy for living in space, but she's used to worrying about me by now. What about you? I mean, besides your sisters and father? There's no one, Princess Lyra said quietly. Royal marriages are political arrangements on Zephyria Prime. I'm expected to marry someone who will strengthen our alliances, not someone I care about. Something in her tone made Marcus look at her more carefully. Princess Lyra was beautiful by any standard. Her blue skin had an almost luminous quality, and her large, dark eyes seemed to hold depths of intelligence and compassion. But more than that, she had a strength of character that reminded him of his sister. The way she'd protected her younger siblings during their captivity. The way she'd adapted to the underground journey without complaint. That seems like a waste, he said carefully. Many things about royal life are wasteful, she replied. But duty comes before personal desires. At least, that's what Father has always taught us. The next morning, Marcus was reviewing intelligence reports when Princess Naya burst into the briefing room. At 15, she was all enthusiasm and energy. Her personality, as vibrant as her sister's, was thoughtful. Marcus, you have to see this. I've been researching human exploration techniques, and I think I understand why you were able to find passages our people missed. She activated a holographic display showing geological surveys of the area around the mining facility. Look at these scans from 50 years ago. When the mines were first opened, the Zephyrian survey teams were looking for crystal formations and metal deposits. They mapped the solid rock but ignored the limestone layers. Marcus studied the display with growing interest. Because limestone is invaluable for mining. And row. Exactly. But limestone is where you find underground river systems. Your species has a history of exploration that includes cave systems and underwater environments. You knew what to look for because you understood the geology differently. General Kess, who had been listening from across the room, approached the display. Princess Naya, are you suggesting that there might be other tunnel systems we haven't discovered? Not just tunnel systems, Princess Naya said excitedly. Look at this area here, beneath the palace itself. The geological composition is almost identical to the region around the mining facility. If Marcus is right about the water table, there could be extensive caves running right under our feet. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Your Highness, has anyone ever conducted a comprehensive survey of the areas directly beneath the palace? General Kess shook her head. The royal compound is built on a sacred site. Traditional law forbids excavation or deep scanning in this area. But if there are natural caves, Marcus began, then the rebels could potentially access them. General Kess finished grimly. Princess Naya, we need to speak with your father about this immediately. Prince Valdris received the news with apparent calm, but Marcus could see tension in the way the older man's hands gripped the arms of his chair. They were meeting in the prince's private study, a circular room lined with ancient books and scrolls that predated space travel on Zephyria Prime. The sacred laws exist for good reasons, the prince said carefully. There are aspects of our history that are better left undisturbed. Father, Princess Lyra said gently, if there's even a chance that rebels could infiltrate the palace through underground passages, Don't you think the risk outweighs traditional concerns? Prince Valdris was quiet for a long moment. His eyes focused on something beyond the windows of his study. Finally, he sighed, deeply. Captain Chen, what I'm about to tell you must remain absolutely confidential. The future of my dynasty, perhaps of Zephyria Prime itself, depends on it. Marcus nodded. You have my word, Your Highness. The royal chamber, the heart of this palace, sits directly above a natural cavern system. It has been sealed for over 300 years. Since the time of my ancestor, King Theron the Wise. The chamber contains artifacts, technology that predates our civilization by thousands of years. Princess Naya leaned forward excitedly. Ancient ruins, archaeological treasures. More than that, Prince Valdris said heavily. The artifacts appear to be some form of advanced technology. We don't understand how they work, but our scientists have determined that they're still functional, and they're responsive. They seem to react to the presence of the royal bloodline. Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle beginning to fall into place. This is why your brother started the Civil War, isn't it? It's not just about succession. He knows about these artifacts. My brother believes that the artifacts represent a source of power that could transform Zephyria Prime into a galactic empire. He's not entirely wrong. Preliminary scans suggest that the technology is incredibly advanced. But he doesn't understand the dangers. What kind of dangers? Princess Lyra asked. Prince Valdris moved to one of the ancient scrolls on the wall and carefully unrolled it, revealing text in an archaic form of Zephyrian script. According to these historical records, King Theron sealed the chamber after the artifacts began to affect people's minds. Exposure to them caused changes in behavior, increased aggression, paranoia, delusions of grandeur. Several members of the royal family died under mysterious circumstances before Theron realized the connection. And you think your brother has been exposed to this technology? Marcus asked. General Thane, the leader of the rebel forces, was my brother's closest advisor for years. 3 months before the Civil War began, I authorized a limited archaeological survey of the lower palace levels. Thane supervised the operation personally. Shortly afterward, both he and my brother began talking about Zephyria's manifest destiny to rule other worlds. General Kess spoke up from her position near the door. Your Highness, if this technology is so dangerous, why haven't you destroyed it? Because we don't understand it well enough to safely dispose of it, and because... Prince Valdris paused, his expression pained, because there are indications that the artifacts might be connected to defense systems that protect not just this planet, but this entire sector of space. Destroy them carelessly, and we could leave dozens of worlds vulnerable to threats we can't even imagine. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. So you're caught between your brother, who wants to use the artifacts as weapons, and the possibility that destroying them could make things even worse. Exactly. And now, thanks to your rescue of my daughters, I have another problem. General Thane knows that the underwater passages exist. It's only a matter of time before he uses them to try to reach the royal chamber. Princess Lyra stood up abruptly. Father, you can't face this alone anymore. Marcus has already proven that he can accomplish things our own people can't. And he's human. Maybe his perspective will help us understand options we haven't considered. Princess Lyra is right, Marcus said. You need someone who can think outside Zephyrian cultural constraints. Someone who isn't affected by your traditions and taboos. Prince Valdris looked around the room at his daughter, his general, and the human who had already saved his family once. Very well, but understand, Captain Chen, that what you're about to see has been hidden from the galaxy for 3 centuries. Once you enter the royal chamber, there will be no going back. Your life will be forever connected to the secret that my family has guarded. I understand, Your Highness. Then tomorrow night, when the moons are dark and the palace is quiet, I will show you what lies beneath Zephyria Prime. And perhaps, together, we can find a way to prevent this ancient technology from destroying everything my ancestors worked to build. That evening, as Marcus prepared for what he suspected would be the most important day of his life, Princess Lyra found him on one of the palace's observation decks. The view stretched across the capital city, where lights twinkled in the darkness like stars fallen to earth. "Are you frightened?" she asked softly. Marcus considered the question honestly. "Yes, but not of the technology itself. I'm afraid of what it might force us to become. Your father is right, there are some types of power that change people just by existing." But you're still going through with it. Someone has to. And I'd rather it be someone who doesn't have centuries of cultural baggage about ancient artifacts and royal destiny." Princess Lyra moved to stand beside him at the railing, close enough that he could smell the subtle fragrance she wore, something like jasmine mixed with starlight. "Marcus, I want you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, I'm grateful you came into our lives. You've reminded us that there are people in the universe who do the right thing, simply because it needs to be done. I think your people do that too. They just forgot for a while because of the war. Perhaps. But you showed us how to remember." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring revelations that could change the balance of power across multiple star systems. But tonight, for just a few hours, Marcus allowed himself to imagine a different future, one where ancient mysteries didn't threaten galactic peace, and where a human cargo hauler might find a place among the crystal spires of an alien world. In the morning, everything would change. But for now, it was enough to stand beside a princess under alien stars, knowing that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. The entrance to the royal chamber was hidden behind a wall of living crystal that had grown seamlessly into the palace's foundation over 3 centuries. Prince Valdris placed his hand on a seemingly smooth section of the wall, and Marcus watched in fascination as bioluminescent patterns spread outward from the contact point, creating a complex geometric design that pulsed with inner light. "The crystals recognize royal DNA," the prince explained as the wall began to dissolve, revealing a narrow staircase carved directly into the mountain's bedrock. "Only direct descendants of the original royal bloodline can open this passage." Marcus followed the prince down the stairs, their footsteps echoing in the narrow space. Emergency lighting activated as they descended, casting strange shadows on walls that showed clear signs of natural cave formation mixed with deliberate architectural modification. "How far down does this go?" Marcus asked, as they continued their descent. "Nearly 200 meters. The chamber itself sits at the heart of the mountain, surrounded by natural rock formations that have provided protection for millennia." The staircase ended at another bioluminescent barrier. But this one was different. Instead of the gentle blue-green glow of the palace's living crystals, this wall pulsed with colors Marcus had never seen before. Deep purples that shifted to gold, then to a silver so bright it was almost painful to look at directly. Prince Valdris hesitated before approaching the barrier. "Captain Chen, before we go further, I need to warn you about what you're going to experience. The artifacts seem to affect different species in different ways. For Zephyrians, prolonged exposure can lead to changes in thinking patterns. We don't know how they might affect humans. Only one way to find out," Marcus replied, though he could feel his heart rate increasing as the prince placed his hand on the barrier. The wall dissolved more slowly this time, and as it faded, Marcus felt a strange sensation wash over him, like standing in the path of a radio transmission he couldn't quite decode. The feeling intensified as they stepped through the opening into the chamber beyond. The royal chamber took Marcus's breath away. The space was enormous, easily the size of a cathedral, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. But it was the artifacts themselves that commanded attention. Floating in the center of the chamber, suspended above a series of concentric circles carved into the stone floor, was a structure that defied easy description. It looked like a combination of architecture and living organism, crystalline formations that branched and interconnected in patterns that seemed to shift and change as Marcus watched. The entire structure pulsed with the same alien colors he'd seen in the barrier, and he could feel something like music vibrating through his bones, though he heard no sound. "By the ancient kings," Marcus whispered. "What is this thing?" "We're not entirely certain," Prince Valdris admitted. "Our scientists believe it's some form of advanced computer system, but it uses principles we don't understand. What we do know is that it's been here far longer than Zephyrian civilization. Carbon dating suggests it's at least 50,000 years old." Arrow. As they approached the central structure, Marcus became aware of smaller artifacts arranged around the chamber's perimeter. Devices that looked like works of art, their surfaces covered with symbols that seemed to move and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Crystalline formations that grew from the walls themselves, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that reminded him of neural networks. The historical records mention a great dying in our planet's distant past, Prince Valdris continued, a time when the indigenous flora and fauna underwent massive changes. Some scientists theorize that these artifacts were left here by survivors of a civilization that existed before the cataclysm. Marcus felt drawn to the central structure despite his caution. As he moved closer, the vibration in his bones grew stronger, and he began to sense something like communication, not words or images, but concepts and emotions flowing directly into his mind. Ancient purpose. Protective vigilance. Waiting for the proper inheritors. It's trying to communicate, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. You can sense it? Prince Valdris looked surprised. Zephyrians require direct physical contact to receive any kind of communication from the artifacts. You're responding from several meters away. Before Marcus could reply, alarms began sounding throughout the palace above them. General Kess's voice echoed from the prince's communication device. Your Highness, we have multiple breaches in the outer perimeter. General Thane's forces are attacking from 3 directions simultaneously. But that's not the worst part. Our sensors are detecting movement in the underground water systems. They're using the tunnels. Prince Valdris activated his communicator. How long before they reach the palace proper? Unknown, sir. They're using some kind of jamming technology that's interfering with our deep ground sensors. But based on the water flow patterns, they could emerge anywhere in the lower levels within the hour. Understood. Seal the palace and activate all defensive systems. We're on our way up. As the prince moved toward the chamber's entrance, Marcus remained standing near the central artifact. The communication he was receiving had become more intense, more urgent, danger approaching, ancient safeguards failing. Intervention required. Your Highness, wait! Marcus called out. The artifact is reacting to the news about General Thane. I think it recognizes him as a threat. Prince Valdris stopped and turned back. What kind of threat? Marcus moved closer to the structure. And suddenly the communication became crystal clear. Images flooded his mind, not memories of the past, but visions of possible futures. He saw Zephyria Prime transformed into a fortress world, its armies spreading across space to conquer other planets. He saw the artifact's technology corrupted, turned from instruments of protection into weapons of domination. And at the center of it all, he saw General Thane. His mind twisted by prolonged exposure to the alien technology. Believing himself to be the chosen heir of an ancient galactic empire that had never existed. General Thane has been exposed to this technology before, Marcus said urgently. The artifact is showing me what he's planning. He doesn't just want to overthrow you, he wants to use these systems to build an empire. But the technology wasn't designed for conquest. It was built for defense. And forcing it to serve aggressive purposes will corrupt it. Corrupt it how? More images flowed into Marcus's mind, and these were darker. He saw the defensive systems that protected this region of space, failing one by one. Without the artifact's mysterious protection, ancient threats that had been held in check for millennia would be free to emerge from the deep spaces between stars. The artifacts aren't just computers, Marcus realized. They're part of a network. A galaxy-wide early warning system left behind by whoever built them. If Thane corrupts the systems here, it could compromise the entire network. Prince Valdris paled. You're saying that our local political conflict could have galactic implications? I'm saying it already does. The sound of explosions echoed from somewhere above them, followed by the distinctive hum of energy weapons. The attack on the palace had begun in earnest. Your Highness, we need to get back to the command center, Marcus said. But first, I need to try something. He approached the central artifact and carefully placed his hand on its surface. The crystal was warm to the touch, and the moment his skin made contact, the world exploded into sensation. Marcus found himself standing in a vast network of light that stretched across the galaxy. He could see other nodes, Other planets where similar artifacts maintained their ancient vigil. Some pulsed with healthy energy, others flickered weakly, and a few had gone dark entirely. But all were connected, part of a defense grid that had protected countless civilizations for 50,000 years. And he could see the damage that General Thane's interference had already caused. The node on Zephyria Prime was fluctuating wildly, its protective algorithms corrupted by exposure to minds that sought conquest rather than guardianship. But Marcus could also see something the ancient builders had built into their system, a reset protocol, designed to be activated by beings whose minds weren't bound by the cultural patterns of any single species. A fail-safe that required outside perspective to implement. "I know what we have to do," Marcus said as he broke contact with the artifact. "But I'm going to need your daughter's help." "My daughters?" "Captain, I won't put them in danger again. They won't be in physical danger. But the reset protocol requires input from minds that understand both the technology and the culture it's protecting. Princess Naya has been studying the geological aspects, and Princess Lyra understands the political implications. Together, they can help me recalibrate the system." The sound of fighting was getting closer. Through the chamber's communication systems, they could hear General Kess coordinating the palace's defense, but it was clear that the rebels were making progress. "Your Highness, we're running out of time." Prince Valdris made his decision quickly. "General Kess, this is Prince Valdris. Send my daughters to the royal chamber immediately, along with whatever technical support staff they need." "Sir, the royal chamber? I thought that area was restricted." "Emergency protocols are now in effect. My daughters have full authority to access any area of the palace necessary for planetary defense." Within minutes, Princess Lyra and Princess Naya had arrived, accompanied by Dr. Yessa Kryn and several of the palace's technical specialists. Princess Kira remained in the heavily defended upper levels, much to her obvious disappointment. "Marcus," Princess Lyra said as she entered the chamber, "the rebels have broken through the outer defenses. Father's guard is falling back to the palace's inner ring. How can we help?" "2. I need you to interface with the artifact directly," Marcus explained. "The system needs to understand Zephyrian cultural patterns in order to properly recalibrate its protective protocols. But it also needs an outside perspective to break free from the corruption General Thane has introduced." Princess Naya approached one of the smaller artifacts along the chamber's wall. "The geological surveys I've been studying, they're all connected to this, aren't they? The underground rivers, the crystal formations, even the living crystal technology our civilization is built on. Everything is connected." Marcus confirmed. "Your entire planet is essentially a component in a massive defensive system. But General Thane's ambitions are causing the system to malfunction." Dr. Kryn was scanning the central artifact with a medical scanner, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Captain Chen, the energy readings I'm getting from this structure are off the scale. If it continues to destabilize at this rate, the feedback could affect every piece of crystal technology on the planet, which means our communication systems, our transportation network, even the structural integrity of our cities," Princess Lyra added grimly. The sound of energy weapon fire echoed from the stairway leading to the chamber. General Thane's forces had reached the lower levels of the palace. "Everyone stand back," Marcus said as he approached the central artifact again. "I'm going to attempt a manual reset of the system. Princess Lyra, Princess Naya, when I make contact, place your hands on the secondary control nodes. The system needs to understand that you're willingly cooperating, not being coerced." "What about the danger to your mind?" Prince Valdris asked. "We don't know how prolonged contact will affect you." "I'm human," Marcus replied with a grin that was more confident than he felt. "We're stubborn. Maybe that'll be enough." As Marcus placed both hands on the artifact's surface, the chamber filled with blinding light. He felt his consciousness expanding, connecting not just with the local system but with the entire galactic network. Through the connection, he could sense the ancient purpose of the builders, a civilization that had faced threats from the dark spaces between stars and had created these protective systems before disappearing into history. But he could also sense General Thane's corruption spreading through the network like a virus. The rebel leader had somehow learned to interface directly with the technology, and his ambitious desire for conquest was overriding the artifact's peaceful defensive programming. Princess Lyra's hand touched one of the secondary nodes, and suddenly Marcus could feel her presence in the network. Her understanding of duty, her love for her people, her desire to protect, rather than to dominate. Princess Naya's connection followed moments later, bringing with it her scientific curiosity and her deep understanding of the planet's natural systems. Together, they began the delicate process of untangling General Thane's influence from the artifact's programming. It was like performing surgery on a living mind, requiring precision, patience, and an understanding of the system's original intentions that went beyond mere technical knowledge. Through the network, Marcus could sense General Thane himself, somewhere in the tunnels beneath the palace. The rebel leader's mind was a maelstrom of ambition and paranoia, convinced that he was destined to rule not just Zephyria Prime but dozens of other worlds. The artifact technology had amplified his natural charisma and strategic thinking, but it had also magnified his worst impulses. "I can see him," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "He's directly below us, in the main water channel. He's planning to emerge in the chamber and take control of the central artifact." "Can you prevent that?" Prince Valdris asked. "Not directly, but I can make sure the system won't respond to him anymore. Princess Lyra, I need you to think about the kind of leader your people need, someone who protects rather than conquers. Princess Naya, focus on the planet itself, on the natural balance the artifacts were designed to maintain." The reset process was complex and exhausting. Marcus felt as if he was wrestling with forces beyond human comprehension, trying to guide them back to their original purpose, while untangling centuries of accumulated distortion and corruption. But gradually, he began to sense the system stabilizing. The artifact's colors shifted from the chaotic mixture of violent purples and golds to the gentler blues and greens he'd seen in the palace's living crystals. The vibration in his bones changed from discordant to harmonious, and he felt the network's protective protocols reasserting themselves across dozens of star systems. Just as the reset approached completion, the chamber's entrance exploded inward. General Thane emerged from the stairway, his blue skin marked with scars from his journey through the underground passages. Behind him came a squad of rebel soldiers, their weapons trained on the chamber's occupants. "Step away from the artifact, all of you," General Thane commanded, his voice carrying an unnatural resonance that spoke of technological enhancement. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." "I understand perfectly," Marcus replied, not moving from his position at the artifact's base. "You've been exposed to technology that's driven you insane with ambition. But it's over, General. The system won't respond to you anymore." General Thane laughed, a sound that echoed strangely in the crystalline chamber. "You think you can deny me my destiny? I am the chosen inheritor of the ancient empire. The artifacts will grant me power over every world in this sector." "There was no ancient empire," Princess Lyra said firmly. "The artifacts were built by a civilization that valued protection over conquest. They would never help someone who wants to use their technology for domination." "Lies." General Thane strode toward the central artifact, his hand outstretched. "The visions showed me the truth. I am meant to rule." But when General Thane's hand touched the artifact's surface, nothing happened. The reset had worked. The system no longer recognized his corrupted mental patterns as compatible with its programming. Instead of granting him power, the artifact simply remained inert under his touch. "Impossible," General Thane breathed, pressing both hands against the crystal surface. "The power is mine by right. The only right the artifacts recognize is the desire to protect others," Marcus said, finally stepping away from the central structure. "And that's something you lost a long time ago." General Thane's expression twisted with rage. He turned to his soldiers and raised his weapon. "If I cannot have the power, then no one can. Destroy everything." But before the rebels could fire, the chamber filled with a harmonic tone that seemed to emerge from the very walls. The smaller artifacts around the room's perimeter began to glow with intense light, and suddenly every weapon in the chamber, rebel and royal guard alike, simply stopped working. "The artifacts have activated their defensive protocols," Dr. Kryn observed with wonder. "They're suppressing all aggressive technology within the chamber." General Thane stared at his useless weapon in disbelief. This isn't possible. The artifacts are tools, nothing more. They have no will of their own. You're wrong, Marcus said quietly. They're not tools. They're guardians, and they've been waiting 50,000 years for beings who understand the difference between strength and power, between leadership and domination. Over the course of the next hour, as General Thane and his soldiers were taken into custody by the Royal Guard, Marcus began to understand the full scope of what had happened. The artifact network had been compromised by the ambitions of beings who saw it only as a source of power. But the reset had restored its original protective function. More importantly, the system had adapted. It had learned from its exposure to human thinking patterns, gaining new flexibility in how it interpreted threats and responses. The rigid programming that had made it vulnerable to manipulation by ambitious minds had been replaced by more nuanced decision-making algorithms. The network is stronger now than it was before, Marcus explained to Prince Valdris as they stood in the chamber several hours later. It can better distinguish between legitimate defensive needs and aggressive ambitions. General Thane's corruption actually helped it evolve. And my brother? The prince asked. What of his claims to the throne? Marcus gestured toward the central artifact, which now pulsed with steady, peaceful light. The system has made its choice. It recognizes you as the legitimate guardian of this world, not because of bloodline or political power, but because of your commitment to protecting your people. Princess Lyra approached the artifact and placed her hand on its surface. Her expression grew distant for a moment, then filled with wonder. I can feel it, she said. The connection to other worlds, other guardians. We're part of something vast and beautiful, a network of civilizations committed to mutual protection. Which brings us to the question of what happens next, Prince Valdris said, looking at Marcus thoughtfully. The artifacts have accepted you as a guardian as well, Captain Chen. They respond to your mind in ways we've never seen before. Will you stay and help us learn to use this responsibility wisely? Marcus looked around the chamber at the ancient artifacts that hummed with protective purpose. At the royal family who had trusted him with their deepest secrets, at Princess Lyra, whose hand still rested on the crystal surface. He thought about his cargo ship sitting in the spaceport above, about the endless routes between stars that had defined his life for so many years. I suppose I could use a change of scenery, he said finally. And someone needs to make sure you don't accidentally break the galaxy's oldest security system. Princess Naya grinned. Does this mean you're staying permanently? Because I have so many questions about human exploration techniques, and Princess Kira is going to be devastated if you leave before teaching her how to swim through underwater caves. I think I can manage to stick around for a while, Marcus replied. Besides, someone needs to help you figure out how to integrate human and Zephyrian approaches to galactic security. The network spans hundreds of civilizations. There's bound to be plenty of work for a former cargo hauler. Prince Valdris smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness Marcus had seen from the ruler since arriving on Zephyria Prime. Then welcome to the Guardian Corps, Captain Chen. May your service bring peace to the stars. As they left the chamber together, the ancient artifacts continued their eternal vigil, their protective networks stretching across the galaxy. But now, they were guided not just by the wisdom of long-dead builders, but by the combined perspectives of beings who understood that true strength came not from the power to conquer, but from the courage to protect. In the years that followed, Marcus would help establish the first interspecies guardian training programs, teaching beings from dozens of worlds to work together in maintaining the ancient network. He would explore star systems that had been protected by artifacts for millennia, learning the true scope of the galaxy's hidden defenses, and he would discover that sometimes the greatest adventures came not from wandering between the stars, but from finding a place where you belonged and fighting to protect it. But that night, as he stood with Princess Lyra on the palace's observation deck, watching the twin moons rise over a world finally at peace, Marcus simply enjoyed the knowledge that he had found something worth staying for. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but sometimes the greatest wonder was the simple act of calling a place home.